Great. Appreciate it. I
Good.
know I'm looking red. Favorite color.
Man, cool.
All right.
All right, we're going live. Just a second. It just takes a few seconds to roll. All right, we are live, and one more button.
Spring training's been a grind yet?
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yeah.
Definitely a grind. Yeah. Monday, almost 20 now, so it is what it is.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you again for joining us. Hey, everybody, thank you all for taking time out your schedule to come and listen to the brilliant and wonderful Dr. Rogelio Riazola. His current role is the Major League Performance Analyst for the Baltimore Orioles. And it means a lot because they're right now in the middle of spring training. So for him to take some time out of his day to come speak to us, we really don't take this lightly, and we thank him for that. So a quick background about Dr. Riazola. He has his PhD and he completed that at the University of New Mexico. And yes, those are Mountain West rivals. So what do we say, class? That's a shame. I know, but it's fine. It's fine. He turned out pretty well to go to New Mexico. But no, he's a brilliant individual. He has a very well accomplished background, and it's exciting to hear him talk about it. And he's excited to share more about his past. And we're going to open the floor up for him to share his experiences and also give some background about his walks in life, his educational experiences, and going more into his expertise. And then we'll leave it open for any questions or comments that you might have for him at the end. So without further ado, I will now turn this over to Dr. Riazola, and the floor is all yours, sir.
Let's do it. All right, let me see real quick. Can everyone see my screen? Classic. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So first off, thank you again for having me, everyone. I know Dr. Roche Rock over here talked about how busy it is, but I do appreciate you all taking time to uh, sit here and listen to me yap. It's always, I think, really good, and I'm sure Cordero can attest to this, like to give back regardless of where we're at, and to give what little feedback or maybe navigation I can in a fairly new world that is sports science. So, generally, what I do is I kind of just talk about how I got to this position, my experiences along the way, and then I really like to, I mean, have as much time as I can to answer questions you might have specific to sports science, specific to baseball now, specific to any other sports that I've been in, and anything related to life as well, because uh, this can be tricky to navigate sometimes. So let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm originally from the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Dundee and or Carpentersville, Illinois. And I went to undergrad at Loyola University of Chicago. Um, so Cordero mentioned, me being I don't even know, a Lobo, I think. It's been so long. Really, I'm a rambler at heart. So you can dog on New Mexico all you want. Don't care. It's not the one I claim. Like I said, I'm a rambler at heart, but I was there to exercise or to study at first music and pre-med. And I realized as I was looking at different med schools that I always looked at what their gyms looked like. And I was spending a lot more times in the gym. And it was my spring semester of senior year. So I had about 6 months to go before I graduated. I went home and I talked to my parents and I was like, I think I want to do this thing called exercise science. My dad said, you know, not very pleasant things at that time. It's all good. It was a good growing moment. But it's pretty much like, we're almost done. Why would you want to switch something? And I think, 12 years later, it was definitely the right move, and I'm happy I stuck with it. But yeah, I decided to switch to exercise science. And that led me to having a graduate assistantship at the Mississippi State University. When I went there, my graduate assistantship had to do with being the head strength coach for the cheer and pom teams, which is really a great experience because then I got to take my 3 or 4 years of personal training and coaching and dive into headfirst collegiate sports. because there was less structure in the funding, and in a lot of ways with everything when it came to the spirit groups, I really got to be the head there and figure out how things were going, um, you know, have training based on the things that I thought were good at the time. So it was a really great learning opportunity, but also led to plenty of mistakes, being that I couldn't really rely on anyone. It was just, hey, you're the boss, go ahead and get to it. My second year of my master's program, I decided that I didn't want to do PT school because at some point I was like, you know what? I'll just take this master's program to be a physical therapist. And I really fell in love with research. And I credit that a lot to my mentor, Dr. John Eric Smith. I mean, phenomenal human being, phenomenal researcher, great professor, just someone who I really looked up to at the time, and I still do. Um, and he kind of brought me into science and research, and that's where I really honed in on my ability to do studies and question things and try to create new knowledge that would help in the grand scheme of the world. If you're involved in research, you know that this tiny little piece means a lot to you. Sometimes it means nothing to others. But somebody next year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll look back at research and be like, oh, this has been done. It was missing this piece. How can I, add to it? And that really helped with that's what really drove me to research. So talking to him, oops, sorry about that. Talking to him, he was like, well, maybe you should just go do research. And I said, okay, cool. So I went to the University of New Mexico. And while there, I was a graduate assistant, teaching classes, teaching activities courses, and really just doing whatever I could to keep my funding as it goes. And I think unfortunately we'll have to deal with a lot of ramifications to the current world and political state. But back then, at least, it was just a grind to get through, get the money, get the funding you needed while teaching classes, being in classes, and then working on your research. But great time there. Learned from some really great mentors. Had the best cohort, like some of my best friends that I will ever have in my life. Um, it was really good times, and I think anyone who's gotten their PhD can attest to it being equally the worst time and the best time of your life. But while I was down there, right before my comprehensive exams, or actually a year before that, I started working at this place called the Performance Ranch. So I met Lawrence, who was my boss and the owner of the gym, through research, and he was like, hey, we don't really have any sort of sports science stuff. We work with, I mean, John Jones, like a lot of high level athletes. Would you be willing to come in and work and build that? And again, I was like, hell yeah. Like, let me do that. Let me test what I've been kind of honing for the past 4 or 5 years and put it into practice. So that was really great to kind of build on the how we use metabolic carts there, how we can use the tech, whether it's watt bike, something small like a push band back then, to key in on what the athlete is doing at that time and how we can hone in on how they're going to win their fight or win their competition. So I was there for about 2.5 years, the tail end of my PhD. Phenomenal, great workplace, great people, great athletes. And while I was getting ready for my comps, my professors were willing to work with me, and I got an internship with the Arizona Cardinals. It was, I think, 8 weeks during preseason training, and it was great. I mean, to learn from someone as established as Buddy Morris, to work with some people at the highest levels and see what it was like within that professional sports setting, because working with fighters is so different. You're contracted, you have a small team, you work together, it is what it is. Working in professional sports where you have multiple athletes balancing multiple schedules is much different and comes with a lot of complexity, comes with its own issues. Um, but like I said, learned a lot, really started, I guess, that fire back in me to kind of get back into professional, like organized sport. And so once I graduated, that led me to working for the Orioles. Really lucked out in just right place, right time. I had just built this sports science department at our gym. The Orioles were looking for that, and I had just graduated. I think it was December 22. Started working January 23. So really, really quick turnaround, and I feel like I blinked, and now this is my third season. So yeah, just been amazing. Outside of that, I do love to travel. Although I may not look it, I would think I'm fairly active, fairly fit. And I do think that that's a huge reason why I like to see the world. It's like, why am I building all this capacity and not taking the experiences while I can? And especially being in sports, you can't travel as much during the season. So it's really just capitalizing on those things. But to give a little bit more insight to my PhD, kind of, we'll say like my academic life, while I was getting my PhD, I taught classes like Intro to Weightlifting, Advanced Weightlifting, test and measurements, more academic setting, and then motor learning. My research focus, what really got me going was I think I was listening to a podcast. Back then it would have been Barbell Shrugged, and I was driving from Mississippi back home. Um, and somebody mentioned that they were like some sort of muscle doctor. And I was like, whoa, muscle doctor, that sounds really cool. And that got me into muscle metabolism. And as I got over here, that kind of naturally, I say over here, when I got to the University of New Mexico, that kind of naturally put itself into cardiometabolic research. So it's the research behind the cardiac emphasis when you are lifting weights. Because my ultimate goal was, how could we get you to lift so much that you never had to run, because I hate running. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think that world exists, but it's a good way to kind of look at trying to solve multiple problems with one training session or one specific type of training session. Um, and from there, kind of just fluttered into a couple other things. Ergogenic aids, specifically it was carbohydrates and performance, which is what my research on cheerleaders was on. And that kind of led me to heat and recovery. Specifically, I think that we hammer away in how we can produce power, how we can produce athleticism, but we don't do a really good job at recovering in different recovery modalities. And so I always thought that heat was really good for you. I have always checked my social media posts. I've always hated on cold and its inability to do the things that it says it does. So I think the natural antithesis of that was heat, which is kind of why I got into heat. Um, so my dissertation was the effects of whole body hot water immersion after exercise-induced muscle damage on exercise performance and inflammatory markers. If anyone ever tells you that your research title is too long, just tell them about mine, and I think they'll back off a bit. But yeah, it was just putting someone through a brutal leg day, pretty much what it was, and then sticking them in hot water, and we're talking hot water. I think it was like 112 degrees Fahrenheit, for as long as they could last. Some people it was 20 minutes, some people it was 40 minutes. Very painful to do either way. And, where we were very lucky to have no one pass out and nothing to happen, but that's what happens when you have I would say, a well-structured research question and team. So I always kind of, now we've gone through that. When I think about how I got here, and the questions I tend to ask students while I was teaching them and during talks like this is like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And I think it's important to understand that that changes maybe on a daily basis. I know there's plenty of times where I'm like, man, is this what I really want to be doing? But for sure on a 6 month, maybe weekly, yearly basis. But I think it's important to ask those questions now, right? Within exercise science in this field, in this degree, you can be a physical therapist, you can be an athletic trainer. And I think that's where most people kind of start, being like, hey, I want to be a PT. Let me go be an exercise scientist. But you can also be a PE teacher if that's your calling. You can be a director, whether it's at a high school, a college, at a Planet Fitness if you want, right? Different gyms that are there. And then you can also just go, we'll say, full medical, right? You can be a medical doctor, you can be a nurse. My wife is a nurse practitioner. She started with her degree in exercise science and then kind of went on from there. You can also be a strength coach, right? I think the more we as more time goes on, you will have to have a master's to be pretty much in any sort of strength position, whether that's in a professional setting or a college setting, which I think is a good thing. You can be a personal trainer, whether that's online, right? Right now, the advent of the internet has allowed for anyone and everyone to train anyone and everyone. So if you're really good at it and you have great knowledge and great skills, you can do that in person and or online. And then you can be like a researcher. And I think that's ultimately where a lot of academia ends up. It's like, man, I just want to keep answering questions. I want to keep having fun. I want to keep nerding out in my lab with my pipettes and just turn on music and just sit there for 6 hours, right? It does take a special kind of person to do that. I don't think I'm that person anymore. I don't think I was really that person back when I was doing it either. And then you can become a professor. And now I think we're seeing more of like what a sports scientist is and really how that field is growing is that someone who is both on the field and an analyst? Is that someone who is strictly an analyst? Is that someone who is half assistant strength coach, half sports scientist? Really depends on the sport, the organization, and the time, right? And the level. So I bring that all up to say you don't have to pick one, right? You can do and be multiple things. So on this top left corner, I do still train some professional athletes, but most of it is just your normal general population. Really enjoy working those populations because like they just want to get healthy, they just want to get strong. And I do that while I am have whatever free time I have outside of the season. Before that, or I guess during that, Upwell was a CBD beverage company, so I was a consultant for them. Really great experience in trying to figure out, like marketing, research for a company. Back then, I really wanted to work for Gatorade, so I thought it was like a natural kind of way to be like sports drink, recovery drink, Gatorade. Um, we did have a podcast for a long time. I think it was 3 years. And we stopped last year. I still like to put it up there just because, to balance out all of these things and then also have a podcast it's a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to have a podcast that's worth listening to anyway. But like you all listen to podcasts. You all know that there's things out there that you're like, who on earth would listen to this? This is atrocious. There is always someone out there who will listen to what you have to say. And if it's a good message, it's a good time. And then those bottom two I did at the same time, right? The Cardinals working at the same time as I was working at the Performance Ranch, as I would do my PhD. Really just was blessed to make a lot of things work. And just another way to say that like if you are willing and able to do these things, like you should. And there may not be like an immediate payoff, but then it does lead to certain experiences that you can look back on and be like, man, I'm really glad that I grinded through that year and a half, 2 years, however long, because it led me to this point, which is ultimately for now working for the Orioles. Now, again, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's not a good enough question, right? Because I do think you have to ask yourself deeper questions like, how do you want to make it fit into this lifestyle? Um, if you are someone who loves to travel, someone who loves to spend a lot of time with your friends and family, and who loves freedom, that's really great. I think we all should do that. But professional sports probably is not for you simply because of the schedule that it demands out of you. And that's not saying that like you can't do those things, right? It would just be very difficult. It will look different than you probably think it would, and it is. But the reward, right, is all of the good things that come with working in sports. You get to decide whether you want happiness and freedom over money, whether you want money over that, or if you want neither, which is what unfortunately a lot of sports science is right now. But you want these experiences that are going to help build into whatever future endeavors you're trying to lead to. I always jokingly tell people when they're like, "Hey, like if I want to be a sports scientist, what should I do?" And I'm like, don't do it, right? That's probably the easiest thing to do. But there are a lot of benefits and a lot of exciting times that come with it. And if you love to do it, then no one should stop you from doing that. I think the biggest takeaway you can take with I'll say my story or whatever is that you should run with any chance that comes your way. I don't think back then I was knowing what I know now, right? Qualified to start up a sports science department or wing, whatever you want to call it, for this gym that was training people at the highest levels of the UFC. Like I work with three people who fought and defended for belts. But when the pressure is there, right, it creates diamonds. And if you can deal with it and if you can show up and do what you have to do, then really great things can come along. And you blink and you're like, oh, we did set that up. That was a good process. This worked really well. And we'll continue to build on this here and there. But you have to have like a very violent belief in yourself and your abilities in order to show up and be like, this is going to be crap for the next couple months and we're just going to keep building on it. But I believe that at some point things will get better. I believe that my skills will improve, that my processes will improve, and that's what's going to get me to the end of the day, the end of the road. I think it's also very important to do these things not alone, right? You have to have great mentors. You have to have a really great um, man, just a really great support system, whether that's your significant other, your family, people that are just in the thick of it with you, um, and mentors, like I said, people who either have been through it, or have friends that have been through it that they can ask and they can rely on, and just finding any way to follow the clues that success leaves, and just build your own way forward. And most importantly, right, you have your entire life to figure out what you want to do. And I say that being 32 years old, feeling like I'm 70. But if I told myself at 18 that I would be in this position, I would be like, wow, we didn't get into med school, or like we decided that we wanted to do something else. Seems like asinine. But I could, if I ever wanted to go back to med school, and I don't ever want to do that. I have a PhD already. I could go and do that. If I said, you know what, sports has been great, but I want to do something else, I'm only 32. It's only been 10 years, really, since I got into this field. I can go do something else. And it's a little easier now. I have a wife, right? I don't have any kids, so it's very easy for me to say like, oh, I'll just go and change. But taking all those things into account, like you can always go and do something else, or you can do something else and come back to this, which may be your biggest passion, which may be your true love, but not shortchanging what life might be and what you want out of it. Now, I say that, and I also know that grinding through something is very, very cool. Being part of winning in a long season is very, very cool. It can make those experiences where you're like, man, do I really want to show up today? Or man, we just keep getting our butt handed to us and this is like terrible or something, really worthwhile because you're building with people, you're building with a team. Um, and ultimately, like you are showing up knowing that the work you're doing is making a difference, that it's important, and that while you're not the one playing the game, you're not the one like dictating schedules and dictating what's happening on the field. You are a small part of the success of something that can really uplift communities, can really uplift people. Um, because we're all sports fans. Unfortunately, I'm a Bears fan, so I know how painful it is to have a team that crushes every fiber of your being. And to be part of a team and something that is like we have been very good the past 2 years. A lot of stuff has built up to get to this point. But to see a city thriving behind a team and knowing that you're playing a part in that is really, really cool and definitely helps with the long days, the long nights, and like this is spring training. We'll be down here for 44 days. There will only be 2 days where we have off. And I live in a hotel for 6 weeks. So it's like those things where it's like, man, that sounds not so great. But if you can chip away and chip away and chip away and hopefully get to October and then build and off of that experience, then sometimes like that makes it all worth it. Um, this right here, this one's so funny to me. I pulled up this picture. It's in the right here with the Facebook page because it's me, my best friend Carlos in the middle, who's our assistant strength coach, and then our strength coach, our head strength coach, all the way to the right. Um, I thought it was great that we made it onto the MLB official page, and when I looked at the comments, people are like, "Who are these people?" And I'm like, "That's fair. We only want to see players, but we're a part of this too, right?" Uh, but that one is one that's it's very happy. It's very means a lot to me. And this is my wife. My wife just got married in November. I owe a lot to her. So, um, yeah, I don't want to just like gloat, right, about my experiences or whatever. There are people that have way cooler experiences that are doing way cooler things. Um, Obviously, this is not the last of the talk, but this is the last of the presentation. So I want to give my information there. We can send it out an email, write it down, connect with you wherever. But just want to make sure that we have a closing statement here of like, this is where I live on the internet if you want to connect with me. And I will be happy to take any questions about, like I said, experiences, what sports science like we use as much as I can talk about here without it being proprietary, and where we've used stuff in the past. So, yeah, I want to open the floor. I want to apologize for, like I said, yapping for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And just feel free to ask any questions.
Right. Appreciate your time. That was a great presentation, Dr. Riazzola. Everybody
I gotta
really
lie to
enjoyed
me.
it. Um,
I couldn't see, so I was hoping you were all laughing and smiling. Sorry about that.
you know what? Let's try this. Hopefully nothing messes up.
You don't have to do that, but
I'd rather do this now
I
during
got
the
it.
questions and not presentation because we
Sure.
have
Yeah,
technical
that's
difficulties
fair.
now. See, look at this.
Yeah. I would have loved this view, but it's all good.
Hey, we were here with you in spirit.
That's fair. That's
All right.
fair.
So I'm actually gonna kick off the questions. I have like a
Do it.
question. So I'm gonna start it off first. Um, as far as like your experiences go, what were the similarities that you saw as a strength coach at Mississippi State and also when you were a researcher at New Mexico? And also, how did you leverage that experience as being a strength coach at Mississippi State during your time while you were getting your PhD?
Yeah, I mean, the similarities were obviously the easy one is that right, it was exercise and sports. Um, so much of it, I think, is like the early mornings and doing things outside of, we'll say, normal times, right? When you're an undergrad, you kind of get to pick and choose your schedule, right? And you're like, oh, I try to get Mondays and Fridays off and just like work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like, I think we all play that game, right? When you're working with athletes, it's like, hey, you got to be there at 4:30 so you can open up the gym by 5 so you can get in there by 5:15. You lift them for, an hour and a half, whatever the time is dictating, multiple groups. And then I go to work. And then once work is done, I go to class. And then once class is done, I go home to do my homework and do all this work that I should be doing that I ultimately don't do. And then you repeat that. So I think using that as a similarity is is appropriate because when you're getting your PhD, it's like you are trying to fit your research into other people's schedules because they're willing to help. They're willing to be participants. And it's like, hey, well, I can only come in at 8 p.m. And you're like, okay, well, I have to get here at 4 a.m. for the other person, but we're going to make it work, right? Because it's important to you. I think that's probably the big theme for PhD, strength coach, and working in sports in general is that you do give so much of yourself to people and to athletes and to your research so that you can make whatever impact you're hoping to make. Yeah.
Other questions? Who else has a question? Go ahead.
My name is Nevaeh.
Hi.
My professional goal is to be an athletic trainer, which is
Okay.
another field that has high burnout and it's high demanding. So as someone who's in professional sports, how do you manage your lifestyle and the demands of being on a professional team?
Yeah. I think you have a good cry every now and then just to be like, okay, we're still human, we're still here. Um, Most people, a lot of caffeine. I don't partake in nicotine, some people nicotine. But I think, the reality is that again, you're giving so much of yourself and there is so much burnout. Um, Especially I'll use baseball, right? I got down here February 8th. And ultimately, I hope the season goes until early November, right? I hope we're in the World Series. But it's tough to go from February to October, be like, the season is over. This has been so long. You know what I want now? An extra month of work in baseball. So to balance that, I think it really is about like I come back to the hotel from working for 12 hours. And I'll do my little stare at the ceiling. I'll do my little scroll on TikTok and just do what I can to decompress. But I also have hobbies. And hobbies I think are really important that are not baseball or not sport focused. Play as many video games as I can. I'm 32 now, so I took up woodworking as my old man hobby. It's been really great to just decompress and learn a new skill. And then, I try to tell myself, even though it's not like a great thing, right? There are a lot of people who would almost quite literally kill to be in this position. And I have to be grateful for the work that I'm doing and grateful for the experiences that I have. Um, and understand that things were way worse and I was making way less money and I was appreciated probably way less when I was in my PhD or when I was doing things differently. And I think that's kind of how I keep my head level. I also have a beautiful wife who I love and who is very good at being like, lock it in or just, come here, let's cry or whatever we need to do. And then the next day, it's time to get back after it. So um, I think most of it is just trying to figure out what is human about you and really trying to deal with that as much as you can.
I got a question, bro.
Sure.
Um, you talked about your background. You started at Loyola Chicago, down Mississippi State, started off personal training in Chicago, strength coach at Mississippi State, working at a performance ranch with UFC fighters, your time as
Mhm.
Arizona Cardinal strength coach during an internship there, and then just your background as a researcher and also teaching classes. And now your current role that you're getting paid the big bucks for, and you're on the settlement a bit. I understand you are in a hotel for 6 weeks, but he's in Sarasota, everybody, right there in Siesta Key. He's fine.
Yeah. Could be worse places. Could be worse places. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But the question I have for you is all of those experiences that you achieved, which of those experiences do you think played the most, or which one of those experiences do you believe was the most beneficial from your past experiences that helped you get to where you are right now? Or if you can't say it's just one experience, how would you say each one of those experiences helped you in their own way to prepare you for the role that you're in right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question, right? And you can only know that once time has passed and you've been through either really good or really bad times. I won't get into like how every experience has shaped me because I think I could talk for hours, right? I think we all could talk about how every day has shaped our thinking or frame of thinking in some way. Um, the one that always hurts to talk about, but has really um, helped me lock it in, lock my life in was while I was working at the Performance Ranch and I got that internship with the Arizona Cardinals. It was also while I was supposed to be studying for my comprehensive exams for my PhD. And if you don't know what comprehensive exams are, they are brutal. For us, it's 2 days of 8 hours of writing. And, once you pass those, then you have a 2 hours of talking and just getting hammered with questions and having to cite what you're saying, having to write what you're saying. Um, but I studied or did what I thought was correct studying while I was in Arizona for that internship. I come back, my professors who were, really good about letting me do the things I needed to do while being at this internship said, all right, it's time to take your comps, let's go. And I didn't pass the first time. And for comprehensive exams, you get two shots. If you don't pass the second time, then you get kicked out of the program. And so imagine working 3.5 years, getting to this point, and then them being like, sorry, man, like, you know what the standards are, you have to go restart somewhere else. It can be, and it was a very destructive experience because I'd never been hit that hard before. Like I said, have a violent belief in the things that I do and my abilities. But I just took on too many things at that time and didn't really focus in on the things that I needed to focus in on. And sometimes life can be really lenient and be like, hey, like we helped you here, it's all good. But for a PhD, you have to earn it. And at that point, they said like you haven't earned it. You haven't worked hard enough to take that next step. Um, and that was really crushing. And it's every time I tell the story, I get a pit in my stomach because I'm like, that's how much it sucks to fail that hard. Um, but to be at that point and you can either say like, you know what, I'm gonna cash it in, like I made it this far, I'll just be ABD, whatever. Or you can hunker down and say like, all right, I have 6 months or how I forgot how long you had a year to do it. I think I was like, I'm just gonna devote every minute of every day for the next 3, 4 months and with the sole intention of doing what I need to do. And getting back and quite literally staring fear in the face and being like, okay, one more shot. And if this doesn't work out, then like you have to rethink your entire life at that moment. And then working through that, passing, passing oral comps, and then crying as soon as I was told I passed because it was just such a relief on me. I don't think I've ever been that stressed before. And um, I think when I think about whatever pressure I'm under now when it comes to the team, the org, work, life. Very few things will match that pressure. And so for me, I'm like, well, if I did that, then I can do anything that I want to do. So that was easily the best and worst thing that shaped my life. And yeah, I 10 out of 10 would not recommend, but if that happens to you, then all you have to do is stare it in the face and go and work hard and create your future by working.
Hi, my name is Riley. I'm a grad assistant here at UNLV, and I work a lot with sports science and athletics here on campus. And we
Cool.
do a lot of testing and reports on like multiple teams. What would you say the biggest difference is between like having to branch out and do a bunch of testing on a lot of different teams versus solely honing in on one team, and how much more like specific can you get when you're solely focused on one team?
Yeah. I'll go one further, right? One person. So when I was working with fighters, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, we have 6 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks. My only focus is you. Like, I have an hour and a half with you every 2, 3 days. So every rep matters, every testing session matters. And it's like we didn't have force plates there. We had a jump mat, which praise because jump mats are also like really great technology. But if you have force decks, right, or Hawkins Dynamics or whatever force plate you might have, um, you can look at a force time curve of every jump, right, and be like, oh, actually, with this little blip here, we can see that the concentric rate of force development, there's something missing, so you're pulling from somewhere else. Does that mean that for this explosive movement, you need more tendon work, you need more muscular work, or is it that that was just like a bad jump? We do it again, things look better, great. And so that's something that is very difficult to do when, like in camp, we have 70 guys right now. Eventually, that gets trimmed down to 26 players on the major league team. But I was brought in to develop the whole org. And if you know baseball, it's the major league team and then triple A, double A, high A, low A, the Florida Complex League, and then the DR. And so part of my job is to make sure that all the testing is going on everywhere it needs to be going on and creating reports so that like while I may not get eyes on it, I have flagging systems that are created so that the coaches can look at it, so that the coordinators and front office can look at it. Um, so I think that you can like as orgs and people get bigger, your systems have to become a lot sharper, and you have to key in on the things that you deem are important. Because you can't just be like, great, let me look at everything and pick it with a fine tooth comb. Um, and yeah, you get really good at coding and things that you can do just to make life easier for you and the people who are using your information.
From an athletic training student here at MLB. In class, we were discussing how certain data and especially a decrease in performance can also be an indication of injury before before an actual injury has even occurred. And so I was hoping to ask you if you do, and if you do, how do you kind of integrate athletic training and physical therapists into if there is like a decrease in performance and finding out if that is a possible injury or if it needs to be more muscle work or tendon work, like you said.
Yeah, right. It's like the $1 billion question, right? It's like, is this leading to injury? Like, great, let's fix it. Um, so I think that all starts with having a good culture and a good team because like I fall under strength and conditioning, strength and performance really. Um, that other side or the other side of the equation is athletic medicine, which is going to be your, at least in our org, physical therapist, a massage therapist, and then we have ATs. Um, every morning we get together and we say, what's the injury report? Who did what yesterday? How are these guys doing? Yada, yada, yada. And if it's like a low back or something, or if it's, some sort of hamstring strain, what I can do is go back and say, like, well, do we have any flags that we missed or something that was happening? And if not, then okay, well, what was done outside of that? Is someone sleeping wrong? Was someone outside of the field, like, I don't know, doing something dumb and riding scooters and they hit something and they fell and they didn't think anything of it, and then now something is tweaked. So much of that information is like, I think right now we are in the process of like, now that we have the sports science stuff set and now that we have some more athletic medicine stuff set, and we have a really good staff, like merging that together to be like, I have this Nordboard data. Like, what do you want from it? We have this data that you guys get. I'm actually going to use that to make sure that the range of motion clears. Now I know that they're strong enough. Well, if something's still happening, now this is a technique issue. So that's off to the coaches. But I still want to go and tell the coaches that, right? So it has to be where you are working in conjunction and you're kind of in lockstep. Otherwise, it's a disservice to be like, man, I'm seeing this as this, and the athletic trainers are like, ah, doesn't matter to us, and vice versa, right? And I've been in plenty of places where that happens, whether it's egos, whether it's difference in thinking, and that can really, no pun intended, hamstring the development of an athlete and the performance of an athlete because we are not doing our job to just put things aside and say, like, what is best for the athlete at this moment. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. you do.
Hi, my name is Star. I'm also a graduate student at UNLV. I'm looking into PhD programs, and I want to know a little more about your research because it sounded interesting to me also.
Yeah, what more about it? Right?
So what did you like work on, or what was it about? Like I couldn't fully understand.
Yeah,
It's
so
about the lifting and cardiac function.
okay, yeah, so the cardiometabolic resistance training. Um, so I think if you go back 20, 30, 40 years ago, the belief was that if you did um, cardiorespiratory training at the same time that you did resistance training, right? So like running after, or yeah, running after you lift, that you would kill gains, right? That it would stunt growth, and that at a cellular level, it would just decrease the pathways, so you're not getting the best bang for your buck. Now, well, once that was dispelled, that like actually you can do both as long as you time them up differently, right? You can run in the morning and then wait 6 to 12 hours and lift at night, and it's going to be like nothing happened aside from the energy difference. Um, but what I was trying to do was try and, we'll say, lift weights with high reps, short rest times, because as you do that, you're going to inherently spike your heart rate. That's going to inherently get you to breathe harder, going to inherently increase your VO2 max. And was there kind of a limit or ability to where you could just lift and get the same benefits you would as you would doing cardio for 30 minutes to 60 minutes? Um, and I think that, you have to do both, as much as I hate to say it. Uh, but it was trying to find how we could kind of check all the boxes. So someone who says, hey, I only have 30 minutes 2 to 3 times a week, and I want to get cardiorespiratory benefits and resistance training benefits, boom, here you go. Oh, and you like to lift weights? Boom, here you go. So just looking at different strategies to doing that. That was kind of my focus there. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have more questions on that?
No, I will look into your publications more.
Yeah. Please do, and then send any sort of criticisms you have my way. That works too. Yeah. Namely, I still haven't published my thesis or my dissertation, so yeah, email me saying you want me to do that. I need the fans to want it for me to do it, but yeah.
Sure.
I got a question for you regarding that weightlifting in place of running. Did you try to introduce that protocol to your pitchers on their arm carry day after they throw?
No chance. No, there's no chance. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, anything for anybody?
I'll ask a quick question. Thanks for this presentation. Very generous with your time. This is fantastic. I love how you talk about doing things outside of work and outside of school. So, or when you're in your training, I'm curious, are you still a musician? Do you still pursue that?
Yeah, that's one thing I probably miss the most. It's hard to sing in a hotel room, right? So I just take it when I'm driving. That's a good time for me to zone in. Um, And then I did grow up playing the clarinet, the sax, and a little bit of the piano, and I just haven't touched those in a while. Before it was I was sacrificing that time to finish my PhD, and now I don't know. There's an ego thing about it too, where I'm like, man, I'm not as good as I used to be. Do I really want to, like touch that and relearn that? But um, I'm sure at some point I'll buy another piano and another saxophone and just annoy the crap out of my future kids. Is probably the hope there. Yeah, yeah, it's a great question.
Got a couple of quick questions, a quick fire round. Just fire them off as we go.
Do it.
Would you rather take a leg kick from John Jones or a pitch to the back of the shoulder blade from Zach Eflin?
Probably the pitch to Zach. Yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
love Zach so much, and he can throw really hard, but there's no leg kick from John Jones that I'm surviving.
Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams?
Well, I'm a Bears fan, so Caleb Williams. I will say if I think that there's any org that was I this is going to be a good future for us, but that was as inept as the Bears were, it's definitely the Jaguars. So
You are a smart man. Cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Derrick Rose or Dwayne Wade?
I'm a Chicago kid. Derrick Rose. Absolutely. That's
Dwayne Wade's from Chicago too, so that's why
I know, but he didn't play for the Bulls.
Yes, he did.
We're not gonna count that like 2 years where he didn't do anything. You want to talk about something that shaped me as a man? Derrick Rose tearing his ACL during the playoffs, absolutely, absolutely was something. So, yes. Yeah.
Chicago through and through. Last
Yes,
question. Would you
unfortunately.
rather see the Bears win a championship or would you rather see the Orioles win a championship?
I don't know why you're doing that to me because the answer, honestly, the answer is the Orioles winning a World Series, right? I mean, so I grew up a Cubs fan. I will always root for the city of Chicago, my hometown, and things like that. But this is a grind, and I'm a competitor, and I want to win. So if that means making people that I know and love temporarily sad, I'm gonna do that because that's what I'm here for. I'm not here for it. It's a great environment. I love the people I work with, but I'm here to win. So that answers that.
Last one. Are you a bigger fan of the new kickoff rules or are you a bigger fan of the new automatic strike zone?
Ooh, I think the strike zone is gonna be good in the future, just because of like how it's gonna potentially change baseball. I'm not a baseball purist by any means. I do think that it adds a level to the game. I do think there's been plenty of times where a bad call has changed the momentum of an inning in a game. So I'm excited to see how that changes things in the same way that a reverse play in the NFL does. So that'll be exciting. I think we're still some time away before it reaches the major leagues, but it'll be within our lifetime. So
Yeah, they are
that's
testing it out
exciting.
right now this year in spring training.
Yeah,
So
in spring training. And it's fun to see people do this. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's see. Is it gonna be a strike? Is it gonna be a ball? But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
awesome. Please stay on after this. But
Yes.
thank you for your time. Thank you for this presentation. Everybody, let's give Dr. Rezola a round of applause. Thank you for that.
Thank you all.
We appreciate your time. Thank you. We're going to stop the recording now. And